I can do it myself. I don't need anyone. It's just faster if I handle it alone. How many times have you said these phrases? How many times have you refused help even when you were drowning? To the outside world, you appear to be the epitome of strength. You are the reliable one, the high achiever, the one who never complains, never breaks down, and seemingly never needs anything from anyone. You wear your independence like a badge of honor. But deep down, in the quiet moments, when the adrenaline of work fades, does that independence feel like freedom, or does it feel like a cage? There is a profound difference between healthy independence, which is the ability to navigate the world with confidence, and what psychologists call hyperindependence. Hyperindependence is not a personality trait. It is not just who you are. It is a trauma response. It is a defense mechanism built on a heartbreaking premise learned long ago, that relying on others is dangerous and that having needs is a weakness. In this video, we are going to deconstruct the psychology of the hyper-independent. We will explore why your brain chose this path as a survival strategy, why it is classified as a flight response, and most importantly, how you can slowly lower the drawbridge of your fortress without getting hurt. If you are tired of being the strong one, this is for you. Let's begin. From the outside, your life looks solid. You handle things. You don't fall apart. You don't lean too hard on anyone. If something goes wrong, you fix it. If someone disappoints you, you adjust. Over time, this becomes your identity. The strong one, the capable one, the person who always lands on their feet. It feels like freedom. But here's the illusion. What looks like freedom can quietly become a cage. A fortress is built for protection. High walls, thick doors, a drawbridge you control. Inside, you are safe from invasion, safe from being let down, misunderstood, or abandoned. Nothing gets in unless you allow it. But nothing gets out either. Healthy independence is flexibility. It's knowing you can stand alone without insisting that you always must. Hyper-independence, on the other hand, is rigidity. It's not a choice you make in the moment, it's a rule your nervous system enforces automatically. Don't rely, don't lean, don't need. And the rule works until it doesn't, because over time, the fortress that keeps pain out also keeps connection out. Help feels intrusive, closeness feels destabilizing, even care can feel like a threat to your autonomy. So you manage everything yourself, not because you want to, but because letting someone in feels riskier than carrying the weight alone. This is the paradox no one talks about. The stronger you become by yourself, the smaller your world can get. The walls grow higher, the gate opens less often, and one day, without realizing it, you look around and notice that you are safe, but you are also alone. That's when strength quietly stops being empowering and starts becoming a prison. No one is born hyper-independent. Children don't come into the world wanting to do everything alone. They reach, they cry, they ask. They assume that when they need something, someone will respond. That's how the human nervous system is designed to develop through attunement, reassurance, and repeated experiences of being met. Hyper-independence begins when that expectation is broken. Sometimes it happens in obvious ways. A parent who is physically present but emotionally absent. A household where feelings are dismissed, minimized, or treated as inconveniences. Other times, it's quieter. Caregivers who are overwhelmed, depressed, addicted, or simply unable to offer consistent support. The child learns, not through a single moment, but through repetition, that reaching outward leads to nothing, or worse, to shame. So the child adapts. They stop asking for comfort because comfort doesn't come. They stop asking for help because help irritates. They stop expressing needs because needs make things harder. And slowly, a brutal lesson takes root. My needs are a problem. In some families, the child goes one step further. They become the stable one, the mediator, the emotional caretaker. They learn how to read moods, manage chaos, and hold themselves together because no one else can. This isn't maturity, it's survival. From the outside, this child often looks impressive, responsible, so grown up for their age. But inside, something essential is missing. There was never space to fall apart, never permission to rely, never the safety required to be small. This learning doesn't stay in childhood. The child grows into an adult who is competent but guarded, self-sufficient but exhausted, someone who doesn't feel entitled to support, only to self-control. In attachment theory, this often becomes an avoidant, dismissive style, not because connection isn't wanted, but because the nervous system learned early that depending on others is unreliable. The tragedy is not that this strategy failed. It worked exactly as it was meant to. The tragedy is that you had to learn it at all, and that the child who learned too fast is still carrying that weight today. To understand hyperindependence, you have to look beyond personality and into the nervous system, because this pattern isn't driven by logic, it's driven by biology. When a child grows up without reliable emotional support, their nervous system learns a very specific lesson. Safety comes from self-control, not connection. Over time, the brain begins to associate closeness with uncertainty, help with risk, dependence with danger. This is where hyperindependence becomes a flight response. We usually imagine flight as running away from a physical threat, but in relational terms, flight looks like emotional withdrawal. It's pulling back when someone gets close. It's becoming busy, productive, efficient, anything that keeps vulnerability at a distance. Inside the brain, the amygdala, the threat detection center, doesn't distinguish between a wild animal and emotional exposure. When intimacy appears, it scans for danger. And for someone who learned early that others can't be relied on, closeness doesn't register as comfort. It registers as loss of control. That's why being offered help can feel strangely stressful. Why depending on someone else creates agitation instead of relief. Your body isn't resisting care. It's protecting you from a threat it learned long ago. This also explains why willpower doesn't fix the problem. You can tell yourself, I should open up more. But if your nervous system still believes that needing equals danger, it will override logic every time. Hyperindependence isn't stubbornness. It isn't pride. It's a nervous system that never learned what safety feels like in the presence of another human being. And you can't heal what you keep mislabeling as a personality flaw. By the time hyperindependence reaches adulthood, it rarely looks like fear. It looks like competence. You're the person others rely on, the one who gets things done without complaining, the one who doesn't need much. On the surface, there's nothing wrong at all. In fact, you're often praised for exactly the behaviors that keep you isolated. One of the most common masks is perfectionism. You don't aim to do things well, you aim to do them so flawlessly that no one has a reason to step in. Mistakes invite correction. Correction implies dependence. So you over-prepare, overthink, and over-deliver, not to impress, but to remain untouched. Another sign is the inability to delegate. Even when you're exhausted, explaining what you need feels more draining than doing it yourself. You tell yourself it's about efficiency, but underneath is a deeper belief. If I hand this over, something will go wrong. Socially, you often become the listener. You hold space for everyone else's emotions, offer insight, give advice, but reveal very little of your own inner world. People trust you, confide in you, lean on you, yet few truly know you. You are present, but protected. And then there's the subtle judgment of needy people, those who ask directly, who lean openly, who express their emotions without apology. Their behavior may trigger irritation or discomfort not because they're weak, but because they represent something you learned to suppress. This is the adult mask of hyperindependence, capable, contained, admirable, and deeply tiring to maintain. Because every day, without realizing it, you're not just managing tasks, you're managing distance. At the center of hyperindependence, beneath the competence and control, there is something rarely named out loud: shame. Not the kind of shame that comes from doing something wrong, but the kind that forms around being something wrong. Around the belief that having needs makes you defective, burdensome, or unworthy of care. This is why hyperindependence isn't just about fear of being hurt. If it were only fear, reassurance might help, logic might work, but shame doesn't respond to logic. Shame tells you that needing is embarrassing, that relying on someone else is humiliating, that if you ask, you expose something fundamentally lacking in you. For many hyper-independent people, this belief was learned early. Needs weren't simply unmet, they were treated as inconvenient. Emotional expression was ignored, minimized, or subtly punished. Over time, the child didn't just stop asking. They internalized the message, I shouldn't need at all. That's why adulthood brings a strange contradiction. You may feel exhausted, overwhelmed, or quietly desperate for relief. Yet the idea of saying, I need help, feels unbearable. Not dangerous, humiliating. This is also where projection appears. When you encounter someone who is openly dependent, emotionally expressive, or clingy, something tightens inside you. You may feel irritation, disgust, or judgment, not because they are doing something wrong, but because they are embodying the very vulnerability you were taught to reject in yourself. You learn to survive by killing off the needy parts of you. Seeing them alive in someone else feels intolerable. This is the hidden cost of hyperindependence. Not just loneliness, but self-erasure. A life organized around never revealing the parts of you that most deserve care. And until this shame is named, not judged, not forced away, but gently seen, true connection will continue to feel out of reach, no matter how capable you become. One of the most painful places hyperindependence shows up is in love. You can care deeply, you can be loyal, thoughtful, even devoted, but leaning, really leaning, feels unnatural. You keep your footing at all times. You manage your emotions privately. You solve your own problems before anyone notices they exist. From the outside, you may look emotionally stable, low maintenance, easy to be with. From the inside, you are constantly bracing. In relationships, this often creates an invisible distance. You share experiences, laughter, even intimacy, but not dependence. Your partner may sense that something is missing without being able to name it. They feel close to you, yet somehow not needed by you. And over time, that can feel like being held at arm's length. This isn't because you don't want closeness. It's because closeness, as your nervous system learned it, comes with risk. Letting someone matter enough to support you means giving them the power to disappoint you. to leave, to see you when you're not composed. So instead, you offer love without weight, care without demand, presence without reliance. And while that may sound healthy, it carries a quiet cost. True intimacy isn't built only on shared joy, it's built on shared vulnerability. On the moments where one person is allowed to be less capable, less certain, less strong. When you never lean, your partner never gets to hold you. They may love you, they may admire you, but they may also feel strangely unnecessary. And being loved without being needed can slowly erode connection, not because either of you failed, but because safety was never allowed to fully enter the room. There is a kind of grief that rarely gets recognized. It doesn't come from losing someone you loved. It comes from losing something you never had. For many hyper-independent people, healing doesn't begin with strength or insight. It begins with mourning. Mourning the childhood where you didn't get to rest, where you didn't get to fall apart safely, where you learned far too early that being easy was safer than being honest. This grief is quiet because it feels illegitimate. After all, nothing obviously terrible may have happened. You survived. You functioned. You became capable. So what is there to grieve? What you grieve is the version of you that never got to be held without earning it. The version that didn't have to translate pain into productivity. The version that could ask and expect someone to respond. Hyper-independence often bypasses this grief by staying busy, by staying strong, by staying in control. But grief waits patiently, and when the armor finally loosens, it surfaces not as tears at first, but as emptiness, as a strange sadness with no clear story attached. This is not regression. This is not weakness. This is reality finally being allowed to register. Because before you can learn to lean now, your system has to acknowledge what it never received then. Not to assign blame, not to rewrite the past, but to honor the cost. You cannot build true safety on top of ungrieved loss. And when this grief is finally named, something subtle shifts. The nervous system begins to understand that the story isn't, "I was too much." The story is, "I had to grow up without a net." And that truth, once felt, becomes the doorway to something gentler than survival. Healing hyper-independence doesn't mean tearing down the fortress overnight. Those walls were built for a reason. They kept you safe when you had no other options. So the goal isn't to shame them or force them down. The goal is simpler and much more realistic. You lower the drawbridge. Interdependence isn't dependence. It's not helplessness. It's the ability to stand on your own and allow support without your nervous system sounding the alarm. It's choosing connection from strength, not from neediness or fear. This shift doesn't happen through insight alone. It happens through experience. You start small, almost uncomfortably small. You let someone help you carry something. You admit you're tired without turning it into a joke. You ask for clarification instead of pretending you already know. Each moment becomes a quiet experiment, proof that needing doesn't automatically lead to loss of control. At first, your body will resist. You'll feel exposed, slightly embarrassed, maybe even irritated at yourself. That's not failure. That's your nervous system updating old information. Learning to receive is often harder than learning to ask. Saying thank you and not rushing to even the score. Letting someone show up without immediately proving you don't need them. Staying present when support arrives instead of minimizing it. Interdependence grows not from grand gestures, but from repetition. from enough safe moments that your system slowly learns a new truth. Closeness doesn't always cost you yourself, and over time, the fortress doesn't disappear. It simply stops being locked from the inside. If you've made it this far, let this land gently. You don't have to prove anything anymore. You've already proven that you can survive. You've shown that you can carry weight, endure silence, and hold yourself together when no one else stepped in. That strength was real, it mattered, and it got you here. But survival was never meant to be a lifelong identity. True strength isn't measured by how much you can endure alone. It's measured by how honestly you can let yourself be supported when support is available. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. You were never meant to earn rest by being useful. You were never meant to earn love by being low maintenance. And you were never meant to walk through life without anyone leaning back when you finally lean in. If this video put words to something you've been carrying quietly, you're not alone here. This channel exists for the parts of us that learn to stay silent too early and are learning, slowly, to speak again. If you want to continue these conversations about the quiet patterns of the human nervous system, consider subscribing to the channel. And if any part of this resonated with you, I invite you to share in the comments. What was the moment you realized you stopped asking for help? Your story might be the one that helps someone else feel seen.